The sun beat down on the desert wasteland, a seemingly endless expanse of sand and rock that stretched out as far as the eye could see. Kael, a skilled thief with a reputation for being untouchable, stood tall, his eyes fixed on the figure before him. It was Azrael, a ruthless mercenary who had once been his ally, but had since become his greatest enemy. "You've been a hard man to find, Kael," Azrael sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "But now that I have you, you'll pay for what you did." Kael's eyes narrowed, his mind racing back to the events that had led him to this moment. It had been 5 years since he and Azrael had worked together, pulling off a string of daring heists that had made them both rich. But on their final top, Azrael had betrayed Kael, leaving him for dead and taking the loot for himself. Kael's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Azrael's men, a group of heavily armed mercenaries who had been hired to take him down. They formed a semicircle around Kael, their guns trained on him. Azrael smiled, clearly enjoying the upper hand. "You see, Kael, I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. And now, you're going to pay for your mistakes." Kael's eyes flicked to the mercenaries, his mind racing with possibilities. He knew he couldn't take them all down, not without a plan. But he also knew he couldn't back down. Not now. He had come too far and sacrificed too much. He thought of Lena, the woman he had loved and lost, the woman who had been killed in the crossfire of Azrael's betrayal. He thought of the pain and the anger that had driven him for so long. With a sudden burst of speed, Kael launched himself at the mercenaries, his fists flying as he took them down one by one. Azrael watched in amazement, his eyes wide with surprise. He had underestimated Kael, and now he was paying the price. But just as Kael was about to deliver the final blow, Azrael pulled out a gun and fired. Kael felt a searing pain in his side, and he stumbled backwards, his vision blurring. Azrael approached him, a triumphant smile on his face. "You should have stayed hidden, Kael," he sneered. "Now, you're going to pay for your mistakes." But just as Azrael was about to deliver the final blow, a figure appeared out of the desert, a woman with a rifle slung over her shoulder. "Leave him alone, Azrael," she said, her voice firm and commanding. Azrael turned, his eyes narrowing as he took in the woman's appearance. She was dressed in a long coat, her hair tied back in a ponytail. She looked like a ghost, a spirit risen from the desert itself. "Who are you?" Azrael demanded. "My name is Ava," the woman replied. "And I'm here to stop you." With a sudden burst of speed, Ava launched herself at Azrael, her rifle firing as she took him down. Kael watched in amazement, his mind reeling with shock. Who was this woman? And why was she helping him? As the dust settled, Ava turned to Kael, her eyes locked on his. "You're safe now," she said. "But you need to get out of here before more of Azrael's men arrive." Kael nodded, his mind still reeling with shock. He knew he had to get out of there, but he also knew he couldn't leave without knowing more about Ava. As they walked through the desert, Ava told Kael her story. She had been a member of Azrael's crew, but she had grown disillusioned with his brutal methods. She had been searching for a way to stop him, and when she had heard about Kael's quest for revenge, she had known she had to help him. Kael listened, his heart pounding with emotion. He had never expected to find an ally in this desert wasteland, but now he had found one. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the desert, Kael realized that he had been given a second chance. He had been given the chance to let go of the past, to move on from the pain and the anger that had driven him for so long. He looked at Ava, and he knew that he had found a new purpose, a new reason to keep going. He had found love, and he had found redemption. Together, Kael and Ava walked off into the desert, their footsteps echoing through the stillness. They knew that they would face challenges ahead, but they also knew that they would face them together. And as they disappeared into the distance, The desert wasteland seemed to stretch out before them. A vast and endless expanse of possibility.